We can't just say, 4,000 people voted in Nevada that were non-citizens, and we're just going to ignore it. We're going to sweep it under the rug and say, the courts have decided the facts. The courts have not decided the facts. The courts never looked at the facts. The courts don't like elections, and so they stayed out of it by finding an excuse, standing or otherwise, to stay out of it. But the fraud happened. The election in many ways was stolen.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Josh Hawley's right. There are regular patriotic Americans out there who don't believe that Joe Biden is actually president. And you know why? Because as patriotic Americans, they've been told to listen to the president of the United States, to listen to U.S. senators. And so when the president and U.S. senators tell them over and over and over again that the election was rigged, they believe it, not because they're crazy, but because they have faith that people in positions of power are going to tell them the truth. So this becomes this circular logic in which Republicans say, well, we got to talk about this because everybody thinks that the election is rigged. By the way, the election was rigged, everybody. There's no way out of that sort of black hole downward spiral if Republicans are willing to stir up the conspiracy theories and then claim that because people are listening to them, we all of a sudden have to talk about it.
Okay, welcome to the War Room. I want to, the guys in Denver and for the production team here, I would like to get the headline from that. That was Senator Murphy. It was from Mediaite, and it's important to put that headline up. And here's why I wanted to start with this. You're in the War Room. We're live from Capitol Hill. We're going to bring in Boris Epshteyn in just 1 second. Very important. Rand Paul going through the details yesterday in the Senate hearing, detailed questions, showing the receipts from every state that you can go into. And then Murphy, they had this thing on media today. Senator Murphy in
I've got it right here.
In 67 seconds, tears down. What does it say?
It says Senator Chris Murphy completely dismantles Senator Josh Hawley's sowing election distrust in 67 seconds flat.
67 seconds, right?
Yeah.
And you see right here, all he said was, patriotic Americans listen to the senators and presidents say no. And here's how they think about their voters versus the difference in the deplorables. I have not heard one person, not one, and we've been doing this now since November, the early morning hours of November 4th. I have not heard one person that said, it was Senator Cruz or Senator Hawley that told me the election was rigged, and I'm a patriotic American, and I believe my senator is rigged. Oh, the president of the United States said it was rigged. Is Murphy kidding me? And is media kidding me? Here's why you're losing, guys, and we know you're losing. These are the tells. That's not dismantled. You said nothing. In fact, the most important thing is what you did not say. Murphy and Anderson Cooper and all of them refused to look into the details. And so now they want to get into this thing, this is just some cult. They just listen. First off, the deplorables listen to a U.S. senator. Are you kidding me? They question everything you guys U.S. senators say. And just listen to the President of the United States? No. What they're listening to is when Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis and Boris Epshteyn and Bernie Kerik are putting around the country these 11-hour and 12-hour hearings that bring up people of the 2,000 signed affidavits of American citizens under the penalty of perjury that with their own eyes saw things or other details like, 20,000 illegal aliens in Georgia or, 10,000 people from a post office box in Michigan. No, Senator Murphy, they're not listening. And this is the tell. This is why we know you're losing, and this is empowering us. Because we understand that every day that we build the case of evidence, data-based, science-based, fact-based. That's your mantra. That's your mantra on COVID, which you never follow. We do here in the War Room. Pandemic, which was the first show to ever do this. Okay, now I want to turn to one of the heroes that's making this done. And folks, this is why today we had John McLaughlin on, and we're going to have other pollsters on. The numbers are shifting, and we're winning. And the reason we're winning is because we have the receipts, okay? And what they have is this mindless spin. Oh, they're patriotic Americans. The President of the United States tell them to do it, and they just believe it. Are you kidding me, Murphy? Are you kidding me? Okay, Boris Epshteyn from the campaign. Thank you. We're going to break this into two parts. Boris is going to walk through all the details of what's happening today. Then in the B block, Maggie VandenBerghe is going to take your Twitter questions. We want to go to Maggie. What are the Twitter handles for you and Boris?
So you can tweet at me at Fog City Midge, and you can tweet Boris. I believe it's Boris EP. And just send us your questions. We're going to be going through. I'll be fielding them to Boris in the B block.
Maggie's going to be drilling Boris with your questions in the B block. Let's go now to Boris Epshteyn. Boris, walk us through in your priorities what's hot today. There's so much going on. subpoenas flying around, forensic audits happening, more details coming out every day. Where are we right now, and where do you want us to focus? Okay, but we have, what's the story? Denver. We do not have Boris Epshteyn. We got to cut this.
I'm here. No,
okay.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
It's
I got.
Was it the deep state?
It's an in-your-face state. Go ahead. What do you got for us, Boris? Let's start at the most important.
I was going so hot. Steve, great to be with you as always.
Thank you.
Great to be with your listeners.
Thank you, brother.
Viewers. Fog City Mitch, great to be with you. It's a huge day out there, folks. Huge day, and we are now 3 days beyond the December 14th so-called, in quotes, drop-dead deadline that the Democrats and their comrades in the media set up. I literally just got off the phone. My last phone call before dialing on here was with one of our key attorneys in Pennsylvania. There's going to be a lot more action coming out of the state of Pennsylvania. The Mike Kelly lawsuit has already petitioned for certiorari to the Supreme Court. Expect a lot more action in Pennsylvania. I've been telling
Okay, let me ask you. I know that Pennsylvania's rich. We had Sean Parnell on today. We understand Pennsylvania is a deep shaft to mine. However, people are sitting there saying the mainstream media says you're 1 for 99 in your lawsuits. Why should an audience get excited about another Pennsylvania lawsuit 3 days after that's going to get filed 4 days after the Electoral College meeting? What's different on this one than the others?
Well, first of all, in terms of the timing, it actually doesn't matter. If you look back to 1960 in Hawaii, which is a precedent that's used, there an election contest was literally decided between when the electors met and when the electoral votes were counted. And that's why it was important for them to send 2 slates. And in Pennsylvania, a Trump slate of electors was sent on Monday to Congress. So there will be a Trump slate up there on January 6th. Why should they get excited? Don't forget, Bush v. Gore was decided against President Bush in the Florida Supreme Court. Usually the only way decisions get up to the Supreme Court, issues get up to the Supreme Court, is by losing all the way down, either on the federal side or the state side. That's why outside of original jurisdiction, which is rare, as we've discussed, that's how cases get to the Supreme Court. What
can you tell us about the details of this lawsuit that are different than the others?
Well, I don't want to get ahead of what we are going to do, an actual legal action, and I always have been consistent on that with you. But let me just tell you that it takes issues that have been argued but have not been argued in front of the Supreme Court, have not gone up to the Supreme Court, and it moves forward on those, very importantly. So that's what this is, and it also answers some of the concerns that the Supreme Court has exhibited and talked about, including in saying that Texas didn't have standing to sue Pennsylvania, which I disagree with, but this would incorporate that issue that the Supreme Court had. So again, the state of Pennsylvania, 20 electoral votes, so important, 700,000 votes in Pennsylvania alone, which were counted without supervision, without observation, without inspection, without those watchers. That's in Philadelphia and Allegheny counties alone, where Pittsburgh is. And we've talked about all the other myriad of issues in Philadelphia and Allegheny County and Pennsylvania as a state in terms of counting votes that came in or were sent after Election Day and other election irregularities. We have not left Pennsylvania behind. We're going to continue to fight it out there on the legal route. And I've been very focused on that today. Also focused on the Wisconsin Supreme Court decision, which stated that COVID-19 should not have been used as an excuse to file an application for approval to vote by mail or absentee as indefinitely confined. We're putting together a program to identify people who misuse that classification. We're almost there on that.
Okay, hold it. Hang on. Whoa. Before you go to Georgia, hang on. This thing in Wisconsin.
I love going all over the place.
Yeah, no, we're going to get there. But this thing in Wisconsin, though, remember, one falls, they all fall. Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona. That's a trifecta right there. Michigan and Pennsylvania and Nevada and New Mexico, I got it. And by the way, you're very strong in Michigan and you're very strong in Pennsylvania. But in Wisconsin, a Supreme Court actually showed you a path to victory there. But it's going to take on the execution side to actually go out and get these indefinitely confined people that should not have been eligible for this is going to be a heavy lift. Is the campaign prepared to put the resources, the time, and the effort with, as I say here in the war room, we're burning daylight? Do you guys have the manpower, the grit, and essentially the will to enforce your will to make sure that all the people that should not have been using that, obviously it's very good to use for people in nursing homes and other things, but people that abuse this and were part of the ballot harvesting that took place in these parks by what Reince Priebus calls the clerks, do you guys actually think you can execute a program that the Supreme Court there is telling you is your path to victory?
Well, there's a couple of ways to go there. The Supreme Court in Wisconsin laid out the problems with the misuse of indefinitely confined. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court also said that the canvassing board was correct in certifying the election. But let's not forget the Wisconsin legislature. So what we're working is to uncover as many of these misuses of indefinitely confined classification as possible, and then we will push for court action on that, but also vitally, importantly, for the state legislature to investigate that misuse, that abuse, that election fraud, and to act accordingly in terms of the Wisconsin electors. Because don't forget, only 20,000 vote difference between President Trump and Joe Biden in Wisconsin.
And you're talking tens of I think it's 150 to 221,000 questionable IC votes, as I believe I'm correct. You guys are going to get into that. Let's go to Georgia. Tell us
the numbers vary. We're going to identify the smallest, most vital set, I would say most fertile set that we can get, and go through those and then take it from there. Yep.
Okay. We got about a minute left in this segment. We'll hold you over, but give us your the flash points in Georgia. There's so much going on in Georgia, and there's basically a revolt of the deplorables. We're going to talk about next segment in the Senate race. But talk to us about what your assessment of Georgia is tonight.
The state lawsuit is vital. The lawsuit, which is robust, talks about the over 400,000 unlawful votes in Georgia during the November 3rd election. So we are continuing to push on that. The Cobb County recount, the signature match, the hand count continues. And we're doing all we can to ensure that is done correctly and not just a recounting of the legal and illegal votes. And the president has the whole country focused on Georgia. You saw a lot of that yesterday during the congressional hearing. It is absolutely imperative to ensure that dead people, out-of-state people, people who are here illegally, are not able to vote in our elections that happen on November 3rd.
But how are you going to get to? I see where you're doing the hand count for the signatures in Cobb County, and I'll talk to you about the photographs later. It looks like people are still pushed away from looking at it. But in 15 seconds, how are you going to get standing to get the rest done? Because so far nothing's happened on that.
That's what the state court lawsuit is all about. About the widespread voter fraud all across Georgia, not just in any one county.
Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. When we return, we're going to have Boris Epshteyn from the campaign and Maggie VandenBerghe. Good question so far?
We've got some great questions for you, Boris.
Of course we do. This is the hashtag War Room Pandemic and the live stream. People are on fire. Most powerful audience in all of global media. You are enforcing your will on this constitutional crisis. Short commercial break. We'll return with Boris Epshteyn, Maggie VandenBerghe, Steve Bannon in a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Folks, we got to grab a hold and hold on. We have no choice. Listen to me now. We have no choice but to win this election. They're going to try to steal it. They're going to try to buy it. They're going to do everything they can to lie, cheat, and steal to win this election, like they did in the presidential election. It's impossible. It is impossible what happened. But we're going to get that all corrected. I'm going to tell you, don't give up on it.
Are you going to fight to make this election right?
Pardon?
Are you going to fight to make this election right?
We're going to fight hard.
What can y'all do on January 6th? Madison said y'all had tricks up your sleeve.
We're going to run to it at the airport. Just wait. Well, you see what's coming. You've been reading about it in the House.
The Democrats are not going to.
And we're going to do it in the Senate.
I'm sorry.
That is Coach Tommy Tuberville, now Senator from Alabama, backing Mo Brooks's in the House. Mo Brooks's efforts to actually have a full accounting when we finally get to Washington, D.C. on the 6th of January. A full accounting, 2 hours each of every state, a debate, full debate. I think witnesses, evidence, all of it, which Mitch McConnell's conference call is trying to kill. Tommy Tuberville saying, "Hey, I'm going to be part of that." You've had Rand Paul already talk about it. Senator Johnson. You got Josh Hawley, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Senator Tom Cotton, other people, these other senators that are part of this movement. And remember, here's the question we have, and I want to throw it back to like a movie reference. Who's going to go meet the train? Right? Who's going to go meet the train? If you remember High Noon, a lot of townsfolk, a lot of people talk, we're going to do this, I'm a patriot, we're going to do this. Hey, who goes and meets the train? That's the question on January 6th. This is the question for Loeffler and Senator Perdue. If you commit to meet the train, you're going to have an incredible amount of support among the Trump base and the deplorables. If you do not commit to meet the train, they're going to think that, why I got to go out on January 5th and vote for you? You're just another typical stiff. You're just another establishment Republican. You have to commit. Remember, once you commit, all types of things happen. People call it serendipity or synchronicity or all that. It's just you commit and things will happen. Senator Perdue, Senator Loeffler, you have to commit to meet the train. Like people like Josh Hawley and Tommy Tuberville, Rand Paul, Mo Brooks, and the people in the House. We're going to turn to Boris in a second. We got other questions. Maggie, we got.
We just had something a little exciting happen. So we are almost at 200K on Rumble. So we just wanted to tell our audience to go subscribe to our channel over at Rumble. You never know what's going to happen with YouTube, so make sure you're subscribed.
We hit 300,000 on YouTube and now 200,000 on Rumble.
Almost 200,000. We got to hit that number.
You got to go sign up on Rumble. We've only been up there a short time.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Incredible. Okay, Boris. In Georgia, I just want to make sure everybody's clear. Just in Georgia, are we doing everything possible to make sure that we're not getting that we're not walking into a trap, that we're not getting gamed in Cobb County, that you're fighting with every aspect of these 400,000 votes? That's in addition to the mail-in votes, to the mail-in fiascos, and to the Ware County situation with the Dominion systems, which I think more is going to be happening down there in that. Is the campaign doing everything beyond humanly possible to make sure that we get to what your mantra has been, every legal vote?
100% yes. 100% yes. Everything possible, all channels, legal and legislative, to get to every legal vote. And by the way, I agree with you 100%. I think that David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler should go out there and say that they are going to do the right thing and they are going to support the electors who represent the most legal votes in the state of Georgia. I think that's very simple because it is obvious that is what the MAGA movement, which has got a great home here on the War Room, okay? It's got a brain trust on the War Room. That's what the MAGA movement, that's what Republicans, that's what people who love this country want. And I think that's a very straightforward and a very reasonable request of two Republican senators running for re-election on January 5th.
Okay, we want to go to the brain trust. We actually think the brain trust of the MAGA movement is the audience. That's the most powerful audience in the world. Why? It's a combination of the deplorables and Lao Beijing, the deplorables of China, and plus people, the populist nationalist movement throughout the world, from Australia to Western Europe to India to the Middle East to Africa. I'm going to turn it over to Maggie. You got questions for Boris from the audience?
We've got a ton of questions. So I'm just going to throw them at you, Boris. You can answer quickly, and hopefully we'll get to a bunch of them. So first question, when can we expect the forensic audit results from Arizona, and what do you expect to find from it?
Great question.
The Arizona process, I believe, is going to take about half a week to a week. And what I expect to find is similar to what we found in Antrim County, Michigan, which is a huge number, a really significant error rate that is much, much greater than the 0.0008% error rate allowable under the Federal Election Commission. So I'm expecting those results within days.
So you're either saying sometime half a week to a week, sometime between Sunday, let's say Saturday or Sunday, let's say Sunday, and Tuesday, you anticipate the forensic audit from Maricopa County, the 4 million population, I think 2.5 million voters, 65% of the Arizona voting registered voters. You believe that'll be in this weekend to early next week?
Honest answer, I expect it between Monday and Wednesday. That's what I expect.
Okay.
All right. Next question. If the DNI report is not released by 12/18 tomorrow, can Donald Trump still enact the executive order?
You do need the report from the DNI, but in the end, it's the president's authority, and then he's got authority under that executive order, under the underpinning statutes to use the executive order. He could also request and demand and mandate that the report comes out as soon as he needs it. Now, I've been discussing, and Steve, you and I have even talked about, I believe the president should request and mandate that the information, the report comes out, and then say what other information do you have? Because that's what the DNI.
You believe, I just want to make sure for the audience, you believe for the audience, and we all believe that for the optics of it, since it was an order, and this is something that the left all wanted because of Russia, he gave an order. It's 45 days. You've had plenty of time. Maybe you got more, but you believe it's important. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this, that by tomorrow afternoon, some version of that report comes out with maybe there are going to be other addendums later. Is that what you're saying?
What I believe, and I never want to get ahead of the president, right? Because the president's got information. That's what a lot of people out there who are playing Monday morning quarterback or backseat driver miss. The president's got information that none of us have, right? So unless there's a reason the president knows that it does not make sense for the report to come out publicly tomorrow, I do think that a version of that report should be released, at the very least released to him as the president, and then other information should be added to it as time goes on, if there's new information, as the DNI has stated publicly.
But I think the point for the audience is that the intelligence community has never been a fan of Donald J. Trump for obvious reasons.
For sure.
For obvious reasons. And I just think the audience wants to know that you don't believe the president is going to allow these guys to slow walking, push him around, roll him, anything like that. Radcliffe, this is something he's in charge of. He's going to enforce his will on, correct?
This is in the executive branch. This is under the power and authority of the president, and he's a no one to be pushed around. I think you and me both know that. That's for sure. This is not a president who gets pushed around. This is a president who stands up and fights, and he's fighting for the most important thing in our country, is the integrity of our elections. So he is not going to be pushed around a centimeter on this issue.
Perfect.
Love it. How are they going to ensure the Georgia runoff is secure? And what is the GOP doing down there? I'm getting this question a lot.
That's a good question. The GOP, the RNC, and the Senatorial Committee have been in court to push back on the Democrats' antics on Georgia. Unfortunately, there was a setback in one court case today, but that push is going to continue. So the GOP and all of the entities related, they are taking their fight to court now ahead of the vote to make sure that there are observers who are inspecting the votes, both mail-in and day of, to make sure those observers are not a billion feet away, they're not a football field away, to make sure that there's not a ballot harvesting run wild in Georgia. Unfortunately, it does appear that the Secretary of State of Georgia is just, I don't know, he seems to be obsessed with Stacey Abrams. He wants always to be doing things with Stacey Abrams on the mail balloting and other things. But we are, as Republicans, and not speaking for the RNC, but as Republicans, as those who have a hand in the process, doing everything possible to ensure that the widespread voter issues, voter irregularities, voter fraud on November 3rd don't happen on January 5th.
If you don't have a special session, you don't get some sort of flip on this consent decree for the deplorables, or they're saying, hey, we love you guys. And Boris, we really love you. That's why we're going to your Instagram account all the time. You know, you're becoming a star. However, if Stacey Abrams is so game the system and you have a bunch of weak-willed guys like Roethlisberger and Kemp, who, by the way, Trump, if it wasn't for Trump's support, they wouldn't even be there. If they're kowtowing to Stacey Abrams and you got the media heads are back in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and CNN happens to be headquartered in Atlanta, walk us through how you actually win.
The way you win is to call your legislators, to call your elected officials, and do everything possible to tweet at them, to tag them on Instagram, where I'm Boris_Epshteyn, as you mentioned. I'm becoming a Graham star, which is always a good thing for a slightly overweight, large, balding man.
Slightly.
So, okay, first of all, take it easy, Steve. Okay. I'll take.
I'm not going to hold it. We want to ask you to. I know you're busy. Can you stay over and just answer 2 or 3 more questions here? We're going to take a short commercial break.
You got it.
You're on fire right now. We're going to take a short commercial break. I'm just teasing Boris. He's a very close friend and a great colleague. So he's going to hang over. We're going to have our great out music, Take Down the CCP by Miles Guo, the Hong Kong song. I saw a thing the other day, a little kid singing, a little 2-year-old kid singing. So fantastic. We'll be back with Boris Epshteyn in a moment.
We will fight till they're all gone. We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back, live from Capitol Hill. It's the War Room, and I got a working mic, even better. Okay, we got Boris Epshteyn from the campaign. We've got 1,000 more questions, but let's go to the curate them and give Boris your best shot there, Maggie.
All right, here you go, Boris. So have the 4 a.m. vote dumps in Michigan and Wisconsin, where 95 to 100% of the votes went to Biden, been addressed, and more importantly, been explained?
So the vote dumps have not been explained. They've been addressed and discussed. Remember, they were discussed extensively during that Michigan hearing that Mayor Giuliani and Jenna Ellis were at, and they've been discussed in Wisconsin in the various lawsuits there. So in terms of those spikes, I, as someone who's been in the middle of this the whole time, I will tell you that I would still like a better explanation about those spikes, and the only way we get them is by taking a look at the machines. And we now have in Antrim County, Michigan, and we know the deep issues there. We need to do the same all across the country.
Awesome.
By the way, Peter, and this is Peter Navarro. I'm very proud of that. We launched that today. It came in the New York Post. We were the first guys to get to it, to launch it. Everybody picked it up. AP picked it up, and he's going to be on Martha McCallum, scheduled to be on Martha McCallum on Fox at, I think, 7 o'clock tonight. So Peter Navarro, that report called the Immaculate Deception gets to what the question was to Boris. It gets into the depths of these anomalies, of these vote dumps that came in Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania in the wee morning hours when the counting is supposed to be stopped. Read Peter Navarro's fantastic analytical piece, which Liz Yore, who's got pretty exacting standards, said it's the single best analysis and summary in one place of all the information you need. And so this is setting the framework so that Boris and Rudy and Jenna and Bernie and the rest of the team can grind through the details.
Yeah, and just for people that didn't catch our morning show, this report is bombshell, and people need to be reading it. They need to be sharing it and pushing this information out because it's being completely suppressed online. So I would say they need to go check out the National Pulse article on it, New York Post. Just share the
AP,
link.
all of it.
It's amazing. Boris, we got another question. If it goes to the House and each state gets a vote, do they have to vote along party lines?
No, they do not. Not at all. So it only goes to the House, keep in mind, if neither side gets 270, and that's called a contingent election. And then there's a state like Pennsylvania where right now it's actually 9-9, 9 Republicans, 9 Democrats. So there's actually, and you've seen this historically when there have been contingent elections in 1801, in 1800, 1801 decided, 1824, 1825 decided, and then there was going to be one in 1876 before Hayes and Tilden made a deal. There's a lot of horse trading that goes on, and legislators of both parties are pulled one way or another way. As as we've discussed. So, for the president in the House, the vice president in the Senate,
Yeah.
there is no obligation to vote down party lines.
But I want to frame this for a second because this is very important. This is why we continue to focus on and hammer on this show Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona. Wisconsin at 20,000 votes, Georgia at about 12,000 votes, Arizona about 10,000 votes. And Boris has been at the tip of the spear at all of these, and particularly in Arizona. If those three were to decertify, right, you get below 270. And there's arguments about, the denominator, everything like that. But the best constitutional guys I know say, hey, under 270, it goes to a contingent election in the House of Representatives for president and a contingent election in the Senate for vice president where you vote by state. Not by individual congressman, but by state. And historically, Boris, would you agree that state party, and this is in state party delegations, I think we control, I think it's 26, 23 to 1 now. Basically, the Republicans have a 3 or 4 state party delegation lead in the different states. So if things voted by basically party, right, by state, President Trump would be in a contingent election in the House of Representatives, would be his victory on November 3rd would be affirmed. And he would raise his hand on his family's Bible at noon on the 20th of January. Boris, that's essentially it. That's one of the reasons there's such a focus on these 3 states that really hang in the balance for the decertification. Is that generally the strategy?
Well, there are several perspectives here. One is, you're right, in a contingent election, which would be based on a new Congress, the new after January 3rd, Republicans control. That's one. But two, based on what we're seeing in these states, Georgia, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, these states should not only not necessarily send electors, but I believe, based on the widespread voter fraud and the tight margins in many of these states, they should be sending Trump electors, which then would not necessitate a contingent election. Then on January 6th, it would be, Bob's your uncle. The president would be elected.
By the way, this is a great question for our audience. I know because I do read the Twitter and the chats as much as I can get to. There is this debate between decertification and flipping. What Boris is saying, and from his perspective inside the campaign legal, they're so confident that they have the receipts in these states that it's just not a decertification where they can't decide on what slate to go forward, and so then it gets tossed to the House. He's saying something very different, which is I think we can flip these, and what you're going to see on the 6th is just an affirmation of going through and affirming that the alternative, or the dueling, I think is the term of art, delegate slates that were put forward would be affirmed, and it'd be all over on the 6th. Is that essentially what you're saying, Boris Epshteyn?
Yes. If Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, any combination of 37 electoral votes, because Biden is right now at 306 according to the mainstream media. So if that flips to President Trump, that's the result of this election. And that is why it's so important to get to the bottom of who won the most, I know I keep saying this, who won the most real legal votes in these states, because that is what is supposed to decide which electors are voted. And that's why it's also vital for the Trump electors to have been sent to Congress on Monday as they were.
Boris, we got to let you go, I know, but is there anything in summary? We didn't get to all the states, and I realize the pressure is coming. We're coming up on another weekend, but we're a couple weeks away from January 5th. You made some very pressing remarks to make sure the guys at YouTube understand this, that the safe harbor, and you said this week before, the safe harbor is just a day in the part of the process. The Electoral College is just a day in the process. The January 20th at noon is what's in the Constitution, and you guys are going to fight every day. The president, I think, has already indicated he's not going to Mar-a-Lago at least this weekend, so he's going to start here in the White House. Is the sense of the team that you have the resources, you have the fight, and you think you've got access to the receipts? You're just looking for basic methodologies of how you play this out, either through state legislatures, through courts, through state courts, through the Supreme Court or the federal courts. But you guys remain highly confident that you're on the right side of history here?
No doubt about it. If you look at across the playing field, from legislatures to the courts, as you mentioned, federal and state court, from the lower level courts all the way to the high court of the United States, the Supreme Court. We are fighting for the most righteous thing in this country, which is our election integrity, free and fair election. We're doing it under the ultimate leadership of President Trump, who has all the fight in him in the world. He is committed to this battle, and he's not giving an inch. And no matter how much the mainstream media whines about it and how much they want him out, or some rhinos may want him out, this president is not giving up, and we're taking our cues from him. We're continuing to fight every minute of every day. As you know, I've given up sleep pretty much. So is the rest of the team. Mayor Giuliani is on it 110%. Jenna Ellis doing a great job. Bernie Kara, Christina Bobb, Catherine Fries, and many others are absolutely killing it for this president and for this country. Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you so much, Fox City Midge. And most importantly, thanks to the Brain Trust, your listeners, your viewers. God bless. Rock and roll.
Yeah, Boris, one last thing. Just again, your Instagram and your Parler and your Twitter, just so people can get access to you during the day.
At Boris EP on Twitter, Boris_Epshteyn on Instagram, the gram, which is blowing up. Maybe I'm the new influencer on the gram. Who knows? Boris_EPSHTEYN, Boris_Epshteyn on Instagram, at Boris on Parler, at Boris EP Twitter, Boris_Epshteyn Instagram, at Boris on Parler. Again, thank you so much. God bless you, and rock and roll.
Boris Epshteyn. Maggie, observations, comments?
Yeah, people are fired up. There is confusion with all these changes coming up, but I think that was great. People love that. So I would love to see Boris do that once a week.
We'll do that. Well, maybe even every other day. We'll get this started. By the way, there was news right there. I've been a decertification guy. Let's. I don't want to get greedy. Let's just get it decertified, kick it into the House, and we'll win there. Reaffirm the victory. What Boris is saying, I think you're seeing in certain moves they're making that they believe they can get the whole thing now, right? Which is fantastic. This is why you're seeing these, and these are dogfights in these states right now. There are people behind the scenes, investigators, people pulling affidavits together, people doing these lawsuits, doing the research on the lawsuits that are, you just filed again in Pennsylvania. There are people that are grinding away 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. The other thing to remember about this team is that they went through a whole thing of having the CCP virus. I mean, a lot of people over there got sick, and Rudy got very sick, right? So think about it. To grind through this at a time when you have limited resources, limited team, limited time, and you got the extra pressure of just being sick, and they didn't miss a day. The other thing that's going on here, too, and this is why we're winning, this is why we're going to win. The more information that gets out to the American people, the more they're sitting there going, not only, hey, what is going on here, but why have I only heard this is baseless? Why have I heard there's no evidence? And I'm sitting here seeing evidence. This is key. The last point I want to make is about a fourth turning. One of the keys of a fourth turning is that they're all kind of people that you've never heard of before. They get thrown up in the chaotic times, and all of a sudden they step up. And if that moment of time where their fate and their destiny and their dharma all intersect, if they're able to hit their mark and perform, they become stars. And you see guys like William Tecumseh Sherman, who was basically running a small military academy and then became one of the great generals in the Civil War, Ulysses S. Grant, or a railroad lawyer named Abraham Lincoln. You see this throughout American history, in the Revolution, in the Civil War, in the Great Depression of World War II, the great turnings of American history, and you're seeing it here. You're seeing it in guys like Boris Epshteyn and Jenna Ellis you never heard of before, right? All these people are coming up. There's one particularly, I want to get about a minute here. This whole thing with the intelligence community. I want to get the picture of Ezra Cohen Watnick, young man I was very fortunate to work with in the White House from the very beginning. Came over with Mike Flynn and knew Devin Nunes. He's now acting Under Secretary of State for Intelligence. One of the reasons you're having these massive fights in the intelligence community to get it right about the Chinese Communist Party and their influence peddling, their influence operation in the United States. It's people like Ezra Cohen Watnick, heroes like this, if you've never heard of before, that are now going to start to come to the forefront. They're at the vanguard of saving this republic. You see guys like Radcliffe, or some congressman down in Texas, guys like Ezra Cohen. These are the people are at the vanguard of defending this republic. We're going to take a short commercial break. When we return, we're going to have the author, columnist for the New York Post, a great columnist, my former editor of Big Government at Breitbart many years ago, the author of Last Stands, Why Men Fight When All Is Lost. Well, all ain't lost here. This ain't a last stand. This is just a stand in which we're going to have victory. We're going to talk about the Chosin Reservoir in the United States Marines and the Army in Korea many decades ago. In a moment on the War Room.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
The power of the War Room. This is why Matt Geddes came to us this morning from Camp Freedom. He had been on before. He needed the rest of these tickets sold. Their server went down. The War Room posse hit it so hard that they sold out the tickets. They sold out the tickets, and the server melted down. That's Geddes at Camp Freedom for veterans, PTSD, that they take them outside, they build camaraderie, they get them out in the fresh air, which we owe our veterans. Also, the other day, Parnell was telling me, we talked about his book, the original book, the sales blew up. I was very happy when we had Michael Walsh, an old colleague, dear friend, great writer, columnist at the New York Post, at the PJ Media, all over, but also a significant author and a great thinker, wrote this incredible book, Last Stands, Why Men Fight When All Is Lost. Why Men Fight When All Is Lost. We have there we go. We got the real cover up there. Last Stands. I want everybody, and this is what I'm saying, for Christmas, if you have a young man in your life, particularly if you're a veteran, you're a grandfather, you're a dad, you got nephews, look, give it to the young girls in your family. My daughter got inspired early on, went to West Point, became part of the 101st. She was inspired, and give it to the young girls, but particularly for young men, because he's got a lot to say about masculinity in this book. I want to bring on now Michael Walsh from the New York Post, Last Stands. And I want to have you back like every week talking about all the different last stands you have, but I want to talk about the Chosin Reservoir. I don't think it got enough. We had Patrick K. O'Donnell on the 70th anniversary come on about a week ago, but I don't think the media's done enough to talk about the heroism of our troops during the Korean War. Michael, I'll turn it over to you about your section of the book that deals with the Chosin Reservoir.
Oh, Steve, thanks very much for having me on again. You know, the Chosin Reservoir means a lot to me. My father was there 70 years ago. Basically, he just the Marine Corps battle finished about a week ago, 70 years ago now. Also, thanks for plugging the book. As you know, we sold out on day one on Amazon, and they've had trouble keeping the book in stock ever since, but it's available now, and you can order it now. It may come slightly after Christmas, but I appreciate everyone going out and taking a look at this book. I think we have a lot to say to young men, especially young women too. But let me also say, just as a preface, Steve, for you and I, who come from military backgrounds, grew up in the military. You have a daughter in the military. I have a father and a brother in the military. When I was growing up, the military was, people knew people in the military. Now they don't. The military is a kind of a closed caste because of the all-volunteer army. And as a result, I think a lot of people just think, we'll let them do it, and what do we have to worry about it for? But these are the stories about the men and women, especially men in this book, who go out there and defend this country, who put their lives on the line, and who have faced the ultimate test, which is a last stand. So thank you for that introduction. I appreciate it.
Let's talk
about Chosin,
right before Chosin, why did you pick Last Stands? Why did you pick the whole concept of Last Stands?
Well, no one had ever written a book about it, and that was odd. I thought I asked my friend Victor Davis Hanson, and he said, that sounds like a good idea for a book, and we researched the publication histories and didn't find it. So I thought, why not write a book about what it's like to be at a last stand? And we have testimony down through history from the Greeks at Thermopylae right up to my father's first-person testimony, which ends this book. So you will know what it feels like to be there when all is lost. Now, for the Marines, they escaped. They got out. They elided a double envelopment, which Hannibal had used on the Romans at Cannae. They got out back to Hagaru. And as my father notes in this book, he was the last Marine out of Hagaru They fought their way back to the seashore, the east coast of Korea, and were put on troop ships and then sent back to the United States. But what does it take to do it? And what goes through your mind? And these were the questions I wanted to ask everybody from Leonidas at Thermopylae to my dad, and luckily he's still alive at 94, so I got a chance to ask him.
Well, tell people, we got about 2.5 minutes left. Tell people what the physical environment of what they had to overcome even to fight.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Steve. In all of these battles, we read of the claustrophobia of it, I think, is the most important thing. At Thermopylae, they had a very small line guarding a very narrow pass, but at Cannae, the Romans were surrounded and couldn't fight, literally could not fight, except with their fingernails and their teeth. In each case, the defenders have been surrounded and overwhelmed. That happened at Rorke's Drift, where the British fought off the Zulus. It happened at Khartoum, where they didn't, fighting against the Sudanese and the Mahdi. In Korea, the Chinese came down from the hills and tried to envelop the Marines on both sides who were down in the valley. And the Marines kept them at bay, in part by very smart use of mortar fire. So they inflicted terrible casualties on the Chinese, who weren't ready for this warfare, who weren't dressed for it. It was 30 below zero Fahrenheit. And the Marines were able to keep their line and fall back in an orderly fashion, and sometimes strung out single file along a chasm on one side and a mountain on the other. But with the air power during the day and the unwillingness to surrender or to die, they fought their way all the way back to the Allied lines. It's one of the greatest battles in the history of the Marine Corps and in Western history, for that matter.
No, it's storied, and if you love the Marines, you've got to understand that battle, because what they went through. And by the way, these were many people who didn't have the great training. I mean, they kind of went to boot camp and got shipped in. The whole thing in Korea was just a not thought through disaster. It was the valor and heroism of the combat troops that will go down throughout history. Also, from the Chinese side, we know now the Chinese were all sent there to die by Mao Zedong. This is what they hit wave. If you read the thing, it's wave after human wave, not even with weapons, in 40 degrees below zero. It's incredible.
Right.
The story of both sides, right? And these young Chinese they were just told, they eventually got there, sent there to die, and by the tens and hundreds of thousands. The Marines and the heroism hold themselves together in a strategic retreat is unbelievable. The book is Last Stands. The author is Michael Walsh. Why Men Fight When All Is Lost. It is, the timing on this is absolutely impeccable. You get it. You're not going to be able to put it down, but particularly get it for young men in your family. Okay, Michael, thank you so much. Look forward to having you on next week. By the way, quick, you got Twitter. How do people get access to you? Because your columns and the posts are great. What's your Twitter? What's your Parler?
I don't have either Twitter or Parler, Steve. Twitter, I was one of the earliest casualties of the Twitter crackdown on conservatives, and I'm still trying to get back on Twitter, and I haven't gone on Parler yet, so I'm living the life of the hermit writer at the moment. But check me out on thepipeline.com, which is a new site that I'm editing about energy and global warming issues.
Pipeline.com, Michael Walsh. Okay, we'll see you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. We're going to have breaking news. Steve Cortez will also be with us about Peter Navarro. Watch Peter Navarro at 7 on Fox. See ya.